All right, so in today's class, we're going to be discussing closing the sale and handling objections. But before we get into the discussion, I wanted to review the this week and next week's assignments that will be due. We're in week 13, April 5th, for what's due for this upcoming week, April 11th. Is going to be the Module 6 portfolio project that includes the rough draft, the value proposition, the final assessment, as well as the reflection. In addition to that, you have your Module 6 knowledge check that's due, and then you have an assignment that's due from Module 5. I don't know if everybody did. I saw at least one student complete it, but it's the Module 5 knowledge check. No one mentioned that they couldn't get into it. And I looked yesterday when I was grading papers and noticed that it was not available. So to get to the Module 6 assignments, you go into Blackboard for this course, go to Modules, then go to Module 6, closing the sale and handling objections, and then go into the assignment area, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 assignments that will be due. So all 4 of them are due by 11:59 p.m. on April 11th. As I said before, the Module 5 is available now. That will be due by 11:59 April 6th, and the Module 6 assignment will be due by 11:59 on April 11th. Any questions? Okay, since there are no questions, we'll get into the discussion for closing the sale and handling objections. So after you question the prospect and you deliver the presentation, the sales presentation, it's time to actually close the sale. The ideal situation is for the prospect to absolutely love that presentation that you gave them and be ready to sign the deal. But unfortunately, that's not what typically happens. Instead of approving and loving the sales pitch and signing the documents, there may come a time where you actually get objections or be told no. So when handling that, you have to actually do certain things as far as trying to handle an objection. But even before, they may object to the pricing. When you present the price, um, this is a point in the sale where you give them the price, and it may come up while you're presenting, but usually it's right at the closing. And this is one of the things that they may object to. It's best when you're presenting the price to not start off by giving the customer your lowest price with all of the discounts. You always want to leave yourself some wiggle room to negotiate in case you need it later. So you can always add discounts at the end if you don't need it in the negotiation part. Don't make the mistake of boxing yourself and not having no room to negotiate. Some customers just like to feel they just like the art of making a deal. So you don't always want to leave any type of money on the table either. So just don't shortchange yourself. Don't give them a low price first, and just have a price with some wiggle room in it. So if they do object to your your price and your presentation, there's some things that you can do to deal with those objections. It's first thing is acknowledge it. Second thing, clarify anything that the customer may have a question about. The third thing is address the objection. And then the fourth thing is to confirm. So the first step when responding to an objection is to carefully listen and then show some empathy. So show some understanding. Don't be patronizing, but take take a strong interest in whatever the customer's concern is. Try to understand their perspective, and more than anything, realize that you can't argue with their opinion because their opinion is their opinion. It may be a misunderstanding, a bias, or a strong opinion, but they're sharing their perspective, and you need to make sure you acknowledge that they have a right to what they believe in. The ideal here is that by showing the customer that you're listening, you're active listening to their concerns, the customer will get less defensive and you will gain permission to address whatever the objection is. Avoiding getting defensive and resist the temptation to jump in and respond to the objection right away. So you just want to listen and acknowledge and empathize with the customer. Now, that doesn't mean that you're agreeing with the customer, but you're acknowledging that they have a right to bring up a concern and to also let you know what that concern is and you, that they are able to speak that concern. If they raise a concern about a delivery date of the solution, instead of just, you know, telling them, I understand you have a concern about the schedule, you might want to say something like, it sounds like the delivery schedule and the timeline is important to you in making this decision. And then you can also ask them, can you tell me more about the concerns you have? The next thing is to take some time to clarify the objection. This is very critical in ensuring that you understand the underlying issue and that you address the actual concern that's on the customer's mind. Often customers initially raise one objection, but have an important underlining objection that can only be discovered by asking questions and probing. This approach will also help you avoid sounding confrontational because the objection may be a simple misunderstanding of a point you raised and they just need some clarification. Clarification questions often give customers options or preferences to choose from. For example, you can say something like, is it the delivery of the initial pilot or the overall implementation schedule that is your biggest concern? This type of question allows you to assess the customer's priorities and to also give you additional insight and options for how you respond to the objection. The third thing is to actually address the objection. So you acknowledge that there was an objection. You want to clarify with the customer what their concerns are. The next thing is to actually address what the objection is. Once you've clarified it again and addressed it, you're just going to get down to why it's an objection. For instance, did the objection come up because the customer had a misunderstanding about your solution, or because of their needs, you're not meeting their needs because they prefer maybe one of your competitors? In any case, objections are a symptom of the customer not being far enough along on their own buying process to decide whether or not they want to purchase whatever you're trying to sell to them. In these cases, you will need to move back to the sales process to determine if there are new requirements that have to be identified or parts of your solution that the customer doesn't understand. Now, the fourth thing is to confirm. As with the other stages, as with acknowledging, clarifying, and addressing the objection, you should be frequently checking for understanding with the customer. This is very critical when you're responding to an objection, because you want to ensure the customer understood what you responded and assess whether you have appropriately addressed what their concerns are. So it's not enough to just just have a eloquent response to their objection. The test is whether the customer acknowledges that you have satisfied their concern. The best way is to simply ask them something such as, does your implementation plan and or our discussion here address the concern you had about the delivery schedule? If they don't seem convinced, then you have more work to do and should admit to yourself that the customer may be willing to move forward in the sales cycle until, or they may not be willing to move forward in the sales cycle until you adequately address whatever their concerns are. So after you get through handling the objection, this is the fun part or the exciting part, because you're actually closing on the sale. So once all of a customer's objections have been effectively dealt with, it's time to close the sale. It's important to come to the sales meeting prepared to write up an order. So you want to have you want to go there thinking that the sale is going to go through. You want to be sure to have all of the necessary forms with you for the customer to sign, because there's nothing more irritating than you get to a sale, you present the sale, you address all of the concerns that the customer might have, and to not have the documentation you need. That's kind of annoying to the customer, because it looks like you're not prepared for one, and giving them more time to think about it, they may decide that they don't even want to go with your product. So after the customer signs the order forms, you want to be sure that you show them that you appreciate their business and the opportunity. You also want to let the prospect know what the next steps are going to be in receiving their order. You never negotiate something that you can't do. So if you say you're going to do something, you want to make sure that what you tell them you're going to do is actually able to be done. You have to know what the limits of the product or the service that you're presenting to the customer, so that you don't overpromise anything, because that's another annoyance to customers, where you sell them on one thing and then once they get the product, they find out that it's not as good as you presented it to them. So just make sure you keep those things in mind when you're trying to close a sale, and if you get some type of rejection or objections, you make sure you answer and acknowledge and you take care of those objections so that you can make that sale. Any questions? All right. So as far as the group case project, I emailed you the case project on Saturday. You're expected to do questions number one and question number two. There's only two questions in the case, so you have to do both of them. We didn't have that guest that I was expecting us to have, so it's due by 11:59 p.m. today. If you want to discuss, have a one-on-one check-in during the group meeting session, I'll be available through Skype, so feel free to send me a message if you want to discuss anything. And always, as far as your weekly journal entries, it's the same topic as the previous weeks, where you're reviewing what you learned in today's discussion, as well as if there's anything else you want me to review next week, you can put that in the journal entry. And I'm expecting at least 50 words minimum. Any questions about that?